If you have ever accompanied a choir, there's a good chance that you have encountered open score music. And if you didn't know what it was, it might have terrified you. Today, I'm going to take the fear out of open score by explaining exactly how to read it. I'm Rachel Ehring, and I help pianists turn their skills into income through accompanying. Being a choral pianist is one of the most common types of accompanying jobs out there and can be a great side hustle for any pianist with good sight reading skills. However, there are some things you need to know before you step into your first choir rehearsal. Or if you are already playing for choirs but need a confidence boost, I'm here to help. As you know, a choir is typically made up of 4 parts: soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. Of course, there can be variations of this. You might have a women's choir that has soprano 1 and 2 and alto 1 and 2, or a men's chorus made up of tenors and basses. You can also have a 4-part choir that occasionally splits into 8 parts or more, where there are 2 soprano parts, 2 alto parts, 2 tenor parts, and 2 bass parts. I've even played double choir music where there are 16 parts, but we aren't going to get into that today. We're primarily going to talk about 4-part mixed choir music, so soprano, alto, tenor, and bass today, but these principles can be applied to other types of choral music as well. Sometimes the choir music is written on the grand staff with the soprano and alto written in treble clef and the tenor and bass written in the bass clef. This makes it easy to read the choral parts. It's essentially like playing from the hymnal. You can use your basic sight reading skills to play this kind of choral score. Sometimes, however, you will be handed what is called open score, and that's where things get a little bit hairy. Open score is the term we use when each choral part has its own separate staff. The sopranos have a treble clef staff that they're reading, the altos have a separate treble clef staff for their part, and the basses have a bass clef staff to read. Now you might have noticed I skipped over the tenors. That's because the tenors are what causes the most problems for us as pianists. The tenor part is written in the treble clef, but is sung an octave lower than written. You can see they put a tiny little 8 on the treble clef to indicate that they are to sing an octave lower. If you look at the full 4-part open score, it looks like the tenors are singing above the other parts, but actually they are singing in their normal tenor range. Now, you might be wondering why scores are written this way. The main reason is because it makes it easier for each section of the choir to read their line. It separates everything so that there's no confusion with stem directions or voice crossings or anything like that. For the tenors, their part is written in the treble clef an octave higher to avoid a bunch of ledger lines. Because of the tenor range, it would be tricky to read their part in either treble or bass clef without adding a lot of ledger lines. So the part is written an octave higher, and that solves that particular problem. Now, if you're lucky, you'll get a reduction of the parts written down below the open score so that when all the parts are singing together, you can play from that reduction. If only 1 or 2 parts are rehearsing their lines, I like to go up to the open score so that I make sure I'm playing their part correctly, because in the reduction, it can be difficult to tell which notes belong to which part. If you aren't so lucky, however, you might be asked to read all the parts from the open score, which means that you have to transpose that pesky tenor part down an octave and put it in your left hand, or if the bass gets too low, the tenor might be passed back and forth between your right and left hands. This might sound overwhelming, and it can be at first, but don't worry, because next week I'm going to do part 2 of this video where I share all of my best tips for practicing open score and playing it in rehearsal. By the end of that video, you will have all the tools that you need to be a successful choral accompanist playing open score with confidence. So please hit that subscribe button because next week's video is really, really important. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Rachel Ehring, and I will see you back here next week.